Hey everyone, and welcome to your carrier update presented by Powerfleet on this Friday. Congratulations, you made it again through another week. So what happened this week? Well, we fell right in line with last year. So tender volumes right on par with last year, approximately about 0.6% up year over year, 96.90 on the OTVI. Now, this time last year, we were preparing for, this is January 23rd right here, we were preparing for a pretty significant drop in outbound volumes across the country. So you see this big trough right here. This is the third week in January, traditionally one of the slower times of the year compared to, just non-holiday volumes in general. So you see this trough right here was, of course, the holiday period. We're not going to compete with that, but for a non-holiday type of event, third week in January is traditionally pretty slow week. So we're preparing for that next week. We should see those volumes drop off a little bit. We'll see how that makes sense year over year. But let's see what the freight mix looks like in the country year over year, because even though volumes are on par, if not even with last year, the freight market is dramatically different. We've shifted some of those volumes to the East Coast from the West Coast. Looking at the outbound tender volume index heat map behind me. So anything in the top right is going to be your larger markets, big volumes. Bottom left going to be your smaller market volumes in general. So the red indicates a year-over-year decline in volume, and that negative 26.6% you see there over Ontario is a 26.6% decline in year-over-year volume. 5.6% down in Atlanta. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, however, is 9.5% up. Elizabeth, New Jersey, the big winner this year at 35.3% year-over-year increase. Of course, we've been talking about this for the past several months, where we've seen a lot more volumes move to the East Coast. The port of New York, New Jersey, really feeding a lot of this volume. That trade war situation that we've been talking about, the Los Angeles port, starting to see a lot of that volume decline year over year. So East Coast looking pretty strong in the bigger markets of Allentown, Harrisburg, Houston again, and Dallas starting to show back up after having a pretty quiet year last year. If you look over here on the smaller market side, these are going to be your, the bottom half of the markets, a lot of green over here. So a lot of these smaller markets are starting to emerge back out of their hibernation from 2019. This is a pretty good sign for carriers out there that are trying to rebalance their networks. You don't want to be too heavy in some of these bigger markets across the country, especially when a lot of that volume is coming off the West Coast and just sitting there. So you're going to have to operate regionally, and it's going to take you a longer amount of time to get across the country. Some of these smaller markets, of course, are spread throughout the country. So this is good news for carriers moving into 2020. So even though we are flat year over year, we have some redistribution of freight occurring throughout the country. So a market I want to point out right here, because we do have some weather coming into this part of the country this weekend and today. So the Joliet and Chicago market, you can see these guys have not had a great year, and they are continuing to show declines year over year. So the Chicago market itself looking pretty weak, but it is starting to pick back up here over the last few days, although we don't expect a full-time recovery, especially now that we see this weather event coming into play. So let's look at the near term. This is the map behind me of the weighted rejection index and OTMS, outbound tender market share. You see this Joliet, Chicago market right here in dark red, indicating capacity is getting looser. You see this blue right here. That's the Indianapolis market, but I want you to pay attention to some of these road conditions here. So we have the road conditions map. This pink and red area indicates icing in the next 6 hours. So sometime this afternoon, expect icing conditions to move up into the Midwestern corridor right here. And that's going to create a lot of travel difficulties, especially for your drivers. So be on the lookout anywhere moving up through Iowa into the northern parts of Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota this afternoon. So Indianapolis market, you notice that one was a dark blue market. Let's check out what's going on there. Reefer rejections driving a lot of that instability in that market. So we're seeing increasing tightness because of the reefer rejections. I have here in the purple line outbound tender rejection index for the United States. You see the Indianapolis market is moving up in sharp contrast to the rest of the country. So this is a good market for you to target. That winter weather is not necessarily going to hit the Indianapolis market over the next few days. So they are seeing some tightening capacity irregardless of the weather. So anybody that is a reefer carrier, I do like to look out for my reefer carriers out there over the winter, because it's still a pretty good time of year for that protect from freeze, especially across that northern tier of the country. You're going to see short haul, local. These are going to be shorter moves traditionally that are driving a lot of this capacity tightness. So be on the lookout for that. And that'll do it for today's carrier update.
The comprehensive logistics offerings from PowerFleet cover in-cab ELD, fleet management, trailer tracking, cargo monitoring, and tracking other assets such as chassis and intermodal containers. Power up your operations with PowerFleet.